What if I told you that the type of protein you choose could fundamentally alter how long you live? That the decision between plant and animal protein isn't just about ethics or preference, but about something much deeper, about cellular inflammation, immune function, hormone production, and ultimately, your lifespan. Welcome to one of the most crucial nutritional debates of our time, backed by decades of research involving hundreds of thousands of participants across 32 prospective cohort studies. This isn't about being vegetarian or vegan. This is about understanding what your body needs to function optimally, heal effectively, and age gracefully. Think about protein for a moment. You probably know you need it for muscle growth, tissue repair, enzyme production, hormone synthesis. But what most people don't realize is that protein quality varies dramatically. The source matters enormously for your health and longevity. Let me explain what the research has revealed about plant versus animal protein, and why this distinction might be one of the most important dietary factors you consider. Proteins are complex molecules made up of amino acids. Your body needs 20 different amino acids to function properly. 9 are essential because your body cannot produce them. Different protein sources contain different profiles of amino acids. Animal proteins tend to contain all essential amino acids in proportions that closely match human needs. Plant proteins are often incomplete. They may lack certain essential amino acids or have them in proportions that don't perfectly match what your body needs. But this doesn't mean plant proteins are inherently inferior. When you consume a variety of plant proteins throughout the day, your body can combine amino acids from different sources to create complete proteins. You don't need to eat complementary proteins in the same meal. Now here's something most people don't understand about protein that changes everything. It's not just about the amino acids themselves. It's about the peptides. Peptides are short chains of amino acids. When proteins are broken down through digestion or fermentation, they create peptides. And these peptides have specific biological activities that go far beyond just providing building blocks. Research has revealed that different peptides have distinct biological effects. Some peptides support immune function. Others help regulate blood pressure. Some improve mineral absorption. Others reduce inflammation. Some peptides actually have hormone-like effects that can influence longevity pathways. The peptide profile of a protein source determines a significant portion of its health effects. Here's where it gets really interesting. Fermentation changes everything. When proteins are fermented, whether that's through bacterial fermentation in products like tempeh, natto, or yogurt, or through enzymatic fermentation in certain preparation methods, the protein structure is broken down into bioactive peptides. These peptides become far more potent and bioavailable than the original protein. Fermented plant proteins, in particular, have been shown to produce unique peptides with remarkable health benefits. The fermentation process creates peptides that reduce inflammation more effectively, support gut health more significantly, and may even activate cellular longevity pathways. This is why fermented soybean products like tempeh and natto are associated with exceptional longevity in cultures that consume them regularly. The peptide activity in fermented proteins appears to be significantly more potent than in non-fermented proteins. This is one reason why choosing fermented plant protein sources can amplify the longevity benefits we've been discussing. It's not just about getting the amino acids. It's about getting the bioactive peptides in their most potent form. However, there's a crucial difference beyond just amino acid profiles and peptide activity. The research on longevity and protein sources reveals something far more nuanced than complete versus incomplete proteins or fermented versus non-fermented proteins. Let me take you through what studies have discovered about plant protein versus animal protein and lifespan. The research spanning 32 prospective cohort studies has shown that replacing animal protein with plant protein is associated with reduced mortality risk, particularly from cardiovascular disease, cancer, and all-cause mortality. Here's what one comprehensive meta-analysis found. For every 3% increase in energy intake from plant protein, there's an associated 5% reduction in total mortality risk. That's a significant finding. It suggests that plant proteins might offer protective benefits that extend beyond just providing amino acids. Now, why would plant proteins be associated with longer life? The answer lies in what comes packaged with the protein. Plant proteins are surrounded by a host of beneficial compounds that animal proteins typically lack. When you consume plant proteins, you're also getting fiber, not just any fiber. Soluble fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, reduces cholesterol absorption, stabilizes blood sugar, and supports digestive health. Insoluble fiber that provides bulk, prevents constipation, and may reduce the risk of diverticular disease. Your gut microbiome absolutely thrives on the fiber that accompanies plant proteins. Additionally, plant proteins come with phytonutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals in forms that are highly bioavailable. These compounds work synergistically. They don't just sit passively in your tissues, they actively support cellular health, reduce inflammation, neutralize free radicals, and protect against oxidative stress. When you consume animal proteins, you're getting protein, certainly, but you're also getting everything else that comes with that protein source. Saturated fat, cholesterol, inflammatory compounds if the animal was raised conventionally, hemi-iron, which in excess can contribute to oxidative stress. The research suggests that these companion compounds in animal proteins might contribute to the mortality differences we see in studies. However, I need to give you the complete picture. Not all animal proteins are equal. Not all plant proteins are equal. The context matters tremendously. When researchers look at fish, particularly fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel, they find something interesting. Fish consumption is often associated with reduced mortality risk, even when compared directly to plant proteins. Why? Because fish provides omega-3 fatty acids alongside protein. These omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation, support cardiovascular health, protect brain function, and may even reduce cancer risk. Similarly, when researchers study high-quality animal proteins from pasture-raised, grass-fed sources, they find different outcomes than when they study conventionally raised animal proteins. The quality of the protein source and how the animal was raised fundamentally changes what compounds accompany the protein. Here's what's crucial to understand. The research isn't definitively saying that all plant protein is always better than all animal protein. The research is showing that in general, populations that consume more plant protein relative to animal protein tend to have better health outcomes and longer lifespans. But there are important nuances. When you look specifically at highly processed plant proteins versus high-quality whole plant foods, the benefits shift. Highly processed plant-based foods can be inflammatory, high in sodium, low in fiber, and stripped of the beneficial compounds that make plants protective. Similarly, when you compare lean, high-quality animal proteins consumed in appropriate portions with processed meat products, you see dramatically different health outcomes. So what does this mean for you practically? First, focus on whole food sources of plant protein. Think legumes, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans. These provide not just protein, but also fiber, folate, potassium, magnesium, iron, and phytonutrients. Think nuts and seeds, almonds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds. These provide protein plus healthy fats, vitamin E, magnesium, and antioxidants. Think quinoa, a complete protein grain that provides all essential amino acids along with fiber, vitamins, and minerals. But here's the crucial addition. Prioritize fermented plant proteins when possible. Think tempeh, which is fermented soybeans. The fermentation process breaks down the proteins into highly bioavailable peptides that are significantly more potent in their anti-inflammatory and longevity-promoting effects. Think natto, a fermented soybean product particularly rich in bioactive peptides. Think fermented tofu, miso, and even some fermented grain products. The fermentation creates peptides that can reduce inflammation more effectively, support immune function, improve mineral absorption, and may activate cellular longevity pathways. When you choose fermented plant proteins, you're not just getting protein. You're getting protein that has been pre-digested and transformed into its most potent bioactive form. This peptide activity is why fermented plant proteins are often associated with exceptional longevity in populations that consume them regularly. Second, if you choose to include animal proteins, prioritize quality. Choose wild-caught fish 2 to 3 times per week. The omega-3 fatty acids in fatty fish provide anti-inflammatory benefits that complement the protein. If you consume poultry, choose pasture-raised options when possible. If you consume eggs, pasture-raised eggs offer better omega-3 profiles and nutrient density. Third, think about proportions and frequency. The research suggests that replacing some animal protein with plant protein can provide longevity benefits. You don't need to eliminate animal protein entirely if that's not right for you, but consider making plant proteins the foundation of your meals and using animal proteins as an accent rather than the centerpiece. Fourth, understand the protein needs of your body. This varies based on your age, activity level, health status, and body composition goals. Most people need somewhere between 0.8 grams to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. This range accounts for sedentary individuals through highly active individuals. Consuming adequate protein is crucial for muscle mass preservation, metabolic health, immune function, and recovery. Fifth, consider timing. While you don't need to obsess over protein timing, spreading your protein intake throughout the day can help with muscle protein synthesis, blood sugar stability, and satiety. Including some protein with each meal supports steady energy levels, reduces cravings, and promotes muscle mass maintenance, which becomes increasingly important as you age. Now, let me address one of the most common concerns people have about plant proteins: the concern about getting adequate protein on a plant-based diet. This concern often stems from misunderstandings about protein requirements and plant protein bioavailability. The reality is that plant-based diets can absolutely provide adequate protein for health, athletic performance, and longevity. The key is variety and adequate intake. As long as you're consuming a varied diet of whole plant foods throughout the day and meeting your energy needs, you'll likely meet your protein needs as well. However, there are some considerations. Plant proteins tend to be less digestible than animal proteins due to compounds like phytates and fiber that naturally accompany them. This doesn't mean you can't absorb plant proteins effectively. It just means you may need slightly higher intake to account for the reduced digestibility. Additionally, plant proteins often have lower amounts of certain essential amino acids like lysine and methionine. Again, this isn't a deal breaker. As long as you're consuming a variety of plant proteins throughout the day, your body will assemble complete amino acid profiles. For those who are highly active, elderly, or have specific health concerns, supplementing with plant protein powders from rice, pea, hemp, or pumpkin seeds can be a practical way to ensure adequate protein intake while maintaining a plant-based or plant-forward approach. Now, let me explain something crucial about how plant versus animal protein affects your body at a cellular level. When you consume protein, your body doesn't just use it for building structures. Protein is involved in thousands of biochemical processes. Everything from producing neurotransmitters that affect your mood, to manufacturing antibodies that fight infections, to synthesizing hormones that regulate metabolism, to creating enzymes that facilitate every chemical reaction in your body. The amino acid profiles and companion compounds in plant versus animal proteins can influence these processes in different ways. Plant proteins, with their fiber and phytonutrients, support a more diverse and beneficial gut microbiome. Your gut bacteria ferment fiber, producing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate that reduce inflammation, support immune function, and protect against colon cancer. Animal proteins, particularly processed animal proteins, can promote the growth of different bacterial strains that produce inflammatory compounds. This microbiome difference matters because your gut health influences immune function, inflammation levels, hormone production, and even your mood and mental health. Additionally, plant proteins tend to be associated with lower levels of inflammation. Remember, inflammation is a double-edged sword. You need acute inflammation to fight infections and heal injuries. But chronic, low-grade inflammation is damaging. It accelerates aging, damages blood vessels, increases insulin resistance, affects brain function, and contributes to virtually every age-related disease. The fiber, phytonutrients, and antioxidants in plants actively reduce inflammation. They calm inflammatory signaling molecules. They neutralize free radicals. They support antioxidant enzyme systems. This creates an internal environment that's less prone to the kind of chronic inflammation that damages tissues over time. Animal proteins, particularly red and processed meats, have been associated with increased markers of inflammation. This isn't necessarily inherent to the protein itself. It's often the companion compounds, saturated fat, certain amino acids in high amounts, compounds formed during cooking at high temperatures, and heme iron can all contribute to inflammatory processes. However, this inflammatory effect can be modulated. When you choose high-quality animal proteins, consume them in appropriate portions, prepare them using gentler cooking methods, and balance them with plenty of anti-inflammatory plant foods, the inflammatory impact is significantly reduced. Let me now address the longevity research more specifically. What do those 32 prospective cohort studies actually show? The evidence suggests that higher plant protein intake is associated with reduced mortality from all causes. When researchers track large populations over many years, they consistently find that people who consume more plant protein relative to animal protein tend to live longer and experience fewer chronic diseases. The effect is particularly pronounced for cardiovascular disease mortality. Studies consistently show that replacing animal protein with plant protein is associated with reduced risk of heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. The mechanism likely involves multiple factors: reduced inflammation, better blood vessel health, improved blood pressure, favorable cholesterol profiles, and reduced oxidative stress all contribute. The evidence is also strong for reduced cancer mortality. Certain types of cancer, particularly colorectal cancer, appear to be less common in populations that consume more plant protein and less animal protein. Again, the mechanisms involve multiple factors: reduced inflammation, better immune function, fibers' protective effects on digestive health, and phytonutrients that protect against cellular damage all play roles. Now, here's what's important. These studies are observational. They track what people eat and what happens to them, but they can't definitively prove causation. There are confounding factors. People who eat more plant protein often exercise more, smoke less, drink less alcohol, have better stress management, and make other health-supportive choices. However, when researchers control for these factors, the association between plant protein and longevity often remains significant. This suggests that the protein choice itself contributes to the health outcomes, not just the lifestyle factors that cluster with it. Additionally, there are biological mechanisms that support the connection: the anti-inflammatory properties of plant proteins, the microbiome supporting fiber, the antioxidant phytonutrients, the favorable effects on insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control. All of these create physiological conditions that support longevity. So what's the practical takeaway? How should you actually apply this information to your life? The research suggests that shifting toward a more plant-forward approach, where plant proteins form the foundation of your diet, can support longevity and reduce disease risk. This doesn't necessarily mean becoming vegetarian or vegan, but it does mean making plant proteins the star of most of your meals. A practical approach might look like this. Plan your meals around legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and vegetables. These become your primary protein sources. Then, if you choose to include animal proteins, use them as accents. A small serving of grilled fish or chicken alongside a large portion of lentil curry and quinoa. A couple of pasture-raised eggs with a large vegetable stir-fry and brown rice. Animal proteins become the supporting actors, not the main event. But here's where you can take it to the next level. When possible, include fermented plant proteins in this foundation. Instead of just lentils, try adding tempeh to your meals. Instead of just chickpeas, incorporate miso into your soups and dressings. The fermentation process doesn't just make these proteins more digestible. It breaks them down into bioactive peptides that have significantly more potent anti-inflammatory effects. Remember, these peptides support immune function, regulate blood pressure, reduce inflammation more effectively than their non-fermented counterparts. When you choose fermented plant proteins, you're getting the most powerful version of plant protein available. This approach naturally increases your intake of fiber, phytonutrients, and anti-inflammatory compounds while still providing the protein, vitamins, and minerals you need. It creates the nutritional profile associated with longevity while remaining practical and flexible. I also want to address a question many people have. What about the protein quality and building muscle? Can you actually build and maintain muscle mass on plant proteins? The answer is absolutely yes. Numerous studies and countless athletes have demonstrated that you can build impressive muscle mass, strength, and athletic performance on plant-based diets. The key factors are the same regardless of protein source: consuming adequate total protein, training with progressive overload, allowing adequate recovery, and maintaining overall nutritional adequacy. Plant proteins can absolutely support muscle growth and maintenance. You may need to pay slightly more attention to variety and adequate intake, but this is entirely feasible. The most muscular vegan and vegetarian athletes are proof that plant proteins can support high-level performance. Your body maintains amino acid pools. As long as you're consuming a variety of plant proteins throughout the day, your body will combine amino acids as needed to create complete proteins. Let me now talk about something that might surprise you. The relationship between protein intake and longevity isn't linear. More protein isn't necessarily better forever. Research suggests that while adequate protein intake is crucial for health and longevity, excessive protein intake, particularly excessive animal protein intake, might have diminishing returns and possibly negative effects. High-protein diets, particularly high animal protein diets, can activate a cellular pathway called mTOR, which is involved in growth and proliferation. In youth and during muscle building, mTOR activation is beneficial, but chronic excessive mTOR activation later in life may accelerate aging processes. This is where moderate plant protein intake offers advantages. Plant proteins tend to be less mTOR activating than animal proteins, potentially offering a sweet spot for longevity. Now, I want to address a concern that many people have about plant protein: the concern about B vitamins, particularly B12, and certain minerals. It's true that plant proteins generally don't provide certain nutrients in the same form or bioavailability as animal proteins. Vitamin B12 is the most notable example. B12 is found almost exclusively in animal products and fortified foods. If you're consuming predominantly or exclusively plant proteins, B12 supplementation is generally recommended. Similarly, certain minerals like iron and zinc can be less bioavailable from plant sources due to compounds like phytates that bind these minerals. This doesn't mean you can't get adequate iron and zinc from plants. It just means you need to consume adequate amounts and potentially use preparation methods like soaking, sprouting, or fermentation that can improve mineral bioavailability. Additionally, certain long-chain omega-3 fatty acids like EPA and DHA are primarily found in fish and animal products. While your body can convert ALA from plant sources like flax and chia to EPA and DHA, this conversion is inefficient. Algae-based EPA and DHA supplements can provide these essential fatty acids without consuming animal products. These nutrient considerations don't negate the longevity benefits of plant proteins. They just mean that if you're shifting toward a more plant-based approach, you need to be intentional about nutrient adequacy. This might include supplementation for B12, paying attention to iron and zinc sources and bioavailability, and considering omega-3 supplementation. Let me now return to the question we started with: plant versus animal protein for longevity. The research consistently suggests that plant proteins are associated with better health outcomes and longer lifespan. The mechanisms include anti-inflammatory effects, microbiome support, reduced oxidative stress, and reduced cancer risk. However, high-quality animal proteins, particularly fish with omega-3 fatty acids, can also support longevity. The context, quality, and quantity all matter. The overall dietary pattern matters more than any single food. A practical approach that optimizes longevity would be plant-forward, making legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and vegetables your primary protein sources, including fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week for omega-3 benefits, using high-quality animal proteins as accents rather than foundations. Your body will tell you what's working: energy levels, recovery, body composition, digestive health, mental clarity, inflammation levels. These markers will guide you toward the protein approach that supports your individual health and longevity goals. The research is clear: plant proteins offer longevity benefits. But this doesn't mean animal proteins have no place. It's about balance, quality, and creating a nutritional foundation that supports cellular health and reduces chronic inflammation. The goal is healthy longevity, not just living longer, but living better, being physically capable, mentally sharp, emotionally balanced, and free from chronic diseases. Remember that protein is just one piece of a much larger picture that includes movement, sleep, stress management, meaningful social connections, mental health, purpose, and joy. The type of protein you choose matters, but the way you live your life matters even more. Important medical disclaimer: the information provided in this content is for educational and informational purposes only. It is based on scientific research, expert knowledge, and holistic health principles gathered from various sources. However, this information does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, cannot replace professional medical consultation, should not be used as a substitute for qualified health care, may not be appropriate for your specific health condition. Critical requirements: always consult with qualified healthcare professionals before making health decisions. Seek immediate medical attention for urgent health concerns. Discuss any health changes or new symptoms with your doctor. Ensure any supplements or lifestyle changes are appropriate for your individual situation. Consider your personal medical history, current medications, and health status. Limitation of liability. The authors and publishers of this content assume no responsibility for any adverse effects or consequences resulting from the use of any information, suggestions, or procedures described herein. Individual results may vary, and health outcomes depend on numerous factors beyond the scope of this content. Professional medical care. This content encourages and emphasizes the importance of maintaining regular contact with qualified healthcare providers for proper medical care, diagnosis, and treatment of any health conditions.